And I welcome those that have managed to get here, and also hope the Commissioner can see us. Good morning, Karen. I hope you're feeling a little better. We're sorry to hear you're not well enough to come today.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for letting me join you remotely.
Well, we just hope the line doesn't break and that that it's not too onerous for you. But we've got a lot of papers to get through and a lot of things, so I'll do my best to manage it as well as I can with such an amount of papers. So welcome everyone. We've got some, I think, apologies and some representatives, haven't we?
We have, thank you very much. This morning we've had apologies from Councillor Dolby, and we also have Councillor Relf here with us, who's substituting for Councillor Smith for Ashfield District Council.
Thank you. So without further ado, can we look at the agenda and start with item 1. You have minutes of the meeting of the 15th of December, which now seems a long way away, doesn't it? And minutes of the confirmation hearing held on the 14th of December, and minutes of the confirmation hearing on the 24th of January. If anyone has any comments on any of those, could you just raise your hand? If not, could I move that those are approved from the chair? All those in favour? I think I see all hands going up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 4, we've covered apologies for absence. Item 5, can I ask if there are any declarations of interest by members and officers, first of all for disclosable pecuniary interests? I don't see anyone raising their hand, thank you. Or for private interests, pecuniary and non-pecuniary? Councillor McRae.
I don't know if I need to declare an interest as a ambassador for the VRU, but just to be on the safe side.
Thank you very much for alerting us to that. That takes us to item 6, the work programme, and if I can get my papers off here, that's on pages 27 to 30.
May I ask if there's a date in September? Because it just says September.
Which point are you referring to? Sorry, Miss. The work programme. Okay, thank you.
We are currently working on the draft timetable for next year. As kind of normal, we'll bring the dates to you. We're intending for the March meeting, whatever date that may be, 28th. So yeah, we'll have a date for you then for the rest of the year.
Thank you, Jo. Do you want to carry on? You normally take us through the report. There's a couple of things you might want to raise.
There's not much to add this time. The report is very much as presented. Just to highlight that your main item at the next meeting will be a presentation from the Violence Reduction Unit. You'll also notice at the end we've got the couple of bits hanging at the bottom. The first is the confirmation hearing for the Chief Finance Officer. We'll obviously stay in touch with you when we get confirmation of a date for that. We've also got the review of the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner to bring back and report to you at a later date. But otherwise, very much as written.
Thank you. Any questions? Can I just say to the Chief Constable, we are really looking forward to having an update from the Violence Reduction Unit, and I'm sure that will bring in the general public to hear what's to be said. So we'll look forward to that at the March. Thank you very much. In that case, can we just note the report? Everyone content? Thank you. That takes us then to the work programme, and item 7, the Precept and budget reports. Pages 31 to 148. I won't be testing you on all the pages, But first of all, would like to thank both the Commissioner's team and also officers here for the invaluable support they gave us through the 2 workshops that help us to understand a lot of the things that are in quite detail here in the bulk of the report. And it's always very well received to give us an idea of what's going to be in the full papers. So can I just invite the Commissioner? That's usually what happens at this occasion. I hope you feel strong enough to give us your overview, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Chair. May I firstly echo the thanks to my team at the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner and also the force. You've seen there's a massive chunk of work that's gone into that, and I'd like to do a special thank you to Mark Kimberley. You've got to bear with me a little bit today. Before Christmas was just the practice for COVID. This is definitely a real thing, and I'm feeling very shabby. So I might lean on my team a little bit more than normal. The report sets out why I'm asking the panel today to consider a Precept increase of £9.99 for a Band D property. It's my vision at the end of this term there are fewer victims, greater trust and confidence in the police and the criminal justice system, and a stronger, more resilient network of services supporting victims to recover from harm. With your permission, Chair, I'd really like to bring in the item number 8, which is my police and crime plan here, because this budget was set very much to deliver the police and crime plan. You see the police and crime plan in your pack. As you're aware, this has been developed following extensive public and stakeholder consultation over the last year and evidence of the issues causing greatest harm to our communities. As you know, I've set 3 simple objectives as part of this plan: preventing, responding and supporting. Preventing crime and ASB through early intervention and tackling the causes rather than the consequences of crime. Responding efficiently and effectively to the needs of our communities in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. And supporting victims and witnesses and communities to be safe and, really importantly, to feel safe. The plan also sets a number of priorities which have been directly informed by evidence of needs and issues of greatest concern to our communities. These include serious violence and knife crime, violence against women and girls, neighbourhood crime, including burglary, vehicle crime, robbery and rural crime, and other high harm offences such as slavery, exploitation and abuse. I'd just like to respond to the feedback from the panel following our November meeting. I've taken this into account as part of the final iteration of the plan, so it's now included increasing the profile of my commitment to tackling hate crime and reasserting our commitment to tackling misogyny hate crime. I've made a much clearer commitment to developing local domestic abuse perpetrator programmes and strengthening my commitment to improving resources, equipment and training made available to tackle rural crime. And importantly, the plan now includes a clear and robust performance framework. I've committed to tracking around 130 indicators that are all linked to this plan that will help us to understand the impact we're having. Of these, 12 of the indicators include specific key ambitions that we want to achieve by March 2024. These have been set based on our understanding of the longer term trends, recognising the artificial impact that coronavirus restrictions have had on trends into crime and public perception since March 2020. We've also taken into account the new and planned investment that we're making in these areas, all of which are detailed in the plan. And the factors that are likely to impact these areas, such as new legislation and duties and responsibilities, particularly the serious violence duty, also changes in technology, policy and practice. In short, the ambitions represent what we feel is completely achievable within our collective influence over the next 3 years and the resources that we need to make this happen. In addition to the new performance framework, I've also been developing my annual delivery plan, which sets out the specific actions and activity that will help us to achieve these strategic ambitions. And this will be shared with the panel shortly. So this plan is really delivery focused. And I want to make it clear that that's frontline delivery focused, because overwhelmingly the people, police and partners in Nottinghamshire told me that's what they wanted. So it's a bold plan, but we need an investing budget to make sure that we can deliver this. It's important to me that I justify to the Police and Crime Panel what more people will be getting for more with the Precept. And these are just some of my commitments on how we will use the additional suggested £9.99 for a Band D property to the Make Not Safe by preventing crimes, responding better to incidents of crimes and supporting victims. Please may I draw your attention to page 59 of the pack, which is page 7. It's a report table. So to summarise, to prevent crime, we're providing up to £100,000 per district over the next 3 years to fund crime prevention measures and equipment. This will include target hardening for both houses and vehicles where they're identified risk, as well as more fixed and redeployable CCTV cameras where needed. Ring of Steel. You've heard me talk about this before. I'm passionate about using technology wisely, and the Chief Constable is really keen to get that ring of steel of ANPR around Nottinghamshire. It will create a hostile environment for those causing greatest harm to our communities, particularly in tackling serious and organised crime. And we're going to be investing £500,000 more for ANPR cameras to create that ring of steel around Nottinghamshire. And you know how passionate I am about young people, and we're offering a healthy relationship programme to all schools across the county, which will focus on topics such as domestic abuse, consent and misogyny. So in order to respond better to incidents of crime, with this new budget, we will be strengthening our Operation Reach programme to ensure that police are tackling long-term issues affecting communities by investing in our neighbourhood policing teams. To do this, we're introducing 24 new officers, meaning we'll have 2 new officers for each area. We'll also be rolling out an additional 11 Operation Reach cars, fully equipped with ANPR to enable us to tackle local and vehicle crime. I've seen these in action. I love going out with the Operation Reach team. They call themselves neighbourhood policing with teeth. Also, we're further improving our response to rural crime, and we've got a new rural crime plan. We're improving our capacity and capability and effectiveness to police the digital beat. To do this, we're introducing 9 new officers dedicated funding to ensure our digital policing teams have the resources they need to recover evidence and actionable intelligence. When the Home Secretary came to visit us at the new Joint Police and Fire Headquarters on the 28th of January, she was particularly impressed by the Digital Investigation Unit. And we're absolutely ahead of our game here, but we need to be wise because criminals are too. We're also bolstering our knife crime teams with 2 more uniformed officers in both the city and in the county teams, as well as a new superintendent knife crime lead in our force. And our VRU will be going from strength to strength. There'll be an announcement shortly about funding for our VRU. And to better support victims, we're funding a new restorative justice service to bring victim and offenders into communication. And we know from evidence that this really helps victims recover and reduces reoffending. I'm also chairing now the local Criminal Justice Assurance Board, and we're also for victims, we're doing a victim care needs assessment, and I'm looking to shortly commission a new victim care service. So by putting in place the improvements I've outlined, I'm confident that residents of Nottinghamshire will be able to see the tangible effect of this new investment that they're putting into policing in our area, and we will make Nottinghamshire safe. I'm very happy to answer any questions, or if Mark Kimberley would like to add any more with regards to the report, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think anyone who's read your plan can see the passion that you have coming through it. And every now and again, I always remind myself, as well as other colleagues, that one of our roles is to scrutinise what you're doing,
Yes.
but also to support you. And I think I'm very heartened with the work you've picked up with the local Criminal Justice Board. I think, we could honestly say that we had a slight involvement in that, in supporting your predecessor in recognising that it wasn't joined up, and so we wish you well in that particular venture. I'll open the floor. We have got some questions on the plan, and I'll just check with colleagues if they'd like to do that now or to wait until we've gone through. Much of this, of course, is dependent on all the budget information. And I just want to check if colleagues would prefer to delay these questions and move to the budget and precept, or take the questions on the plan as it's fresh in your mind. Can I put that to which would you prefer? Would you prefer to do the budget questions first and then the plan questions later? So budget questions first, if you feel. I think I'm getting quite a lot of nods on that. So if we could park your plan questions, thank you, Commissioner. We'll come back to those. But if we could move.
Thank you. I just thought it was helpful to, because without the plan, I can't do the. I need the plan sorted for the budget. So that's why I put them both together. But I'm very happy to do budget questions first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So if we can park those questions, there's not very many on the plan, so it isn't anything to worry too much about. But obviously, we've got all these 130 odd pages that we won't go through one by one, but we do have questions and comments, and wondered if you'd like to give any briefing, or your team give any briefing on the budget composition and the reasons. Is that something you would like Mark to come in on? I think I heard you say that. Yeah, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I think the Commissioner there has done a really good explanation of sort of some of. Sorry, is that better? Sorry. So I think the Commissioner's done a really good explanation there of some of the investments that we put into the budget, and obviously those investments are funded through government grant and precept, and that's the core issue. The one thing that I'd sort of like to draw your attention to is the on page 13 of the budget report, or page 65 of your pack, is the efficiencies tables in there. So again, we've built up this year from previous years, 2.5 million last year, 3.4 million pounds worth of efficiencies in this year. That's a really key aspect of what we're trying to achieve, both within the force and OPCC, because we recognise, even with the council tax increases at £10, that is only flat cash, effectively in real terms, for the force in the short and medium term. So to deliver some of the efficiencies and some of the investments that are required does mean there's a constant focus on efficiencies across the piece. There are some details about those efficiencies, but predominantly most of those are around reducing the cost of back office services and admin support services. A real focus on every penny that we can being put onto the front line, either through supporting victims or directly into the force for that investment. The £10 increase is quite important to us, in the sense that, particularly in terms of our longer term position, medium and longer term position, you will see within this budget there are contributions to capital, there are contributions to reserves, and that may give rise to some questions of why do we need the £10. What we have is a significant investment in police officers at the moment, and those police officers start at one level of salary, and over a 5-6 year period, incremental progression almost doubles the cost of a police officer. So what we are doing is providing investment now to either reduce our longer term costs or deliver those efficiency savings, because we know we've got to absorb those incremental progressions as we go forward. And what we present here in terms of the medium-term plan as well, which is included in there, is a set of budget papers that actually give us a balanced position for at least the next 3 years. I think that's the first time we've got to a 3-year position of a balanced budget, and still modest efficiency savings required around about £8.5 million over the next 2 years, the following 2 years. Now, what we won't do is wait 3 years to deliver that £8.5 million worth of efficiencies that's required there, because quite clearly, the earlier we do that, reduces that pressure, but also gives us, again, that ability to continue to invest. And that's where we will move forward with this. In terms of the actual contents of the budgets themselves, all of the, recognising some of the questions that you've asked in there, all of the pay awards, the increase in officers and staff are fully budgeted in there, both the short and medium term. So some of the other reports that do that, we have accounted for efficiency. For inflation. We do that at both a general level and an individual level for things like fuel, utility bills, and so forth like that. I can guarantee we will get that wrong, because especially in the current times. But most of these are done on professional judgment. We have a very effective methodology of monitoring our budgets throughout the year to ensure that where estimates, they're only estimates, they're not actuals, but where the actual expenditure varies from that, we will take corrective action, both upwards and downwards. And we've got a good mechanism for doing that. So again, delivery, I think, certainly over the last 3 years has been either close to and under budget. And we will continue with that delivery for this current year and for the 22-23 year that we've got in there. But I think that's it for me, but I'm more than happy to ask any detailed questions.
Thank you very much, Mark. And firstly, can I thank the Commissioner Henry and her team for responding to quite a lot of questions that the panel put forward from reading through all the budget papers. It's just a way of expediting things rather than trying to cope with hundreds of questions at a short meeting. So we do appreciate the effort that's gone into that on both sides. But still, there will be some further clarification, I think, of some of the things that have gone into the responses. Obviously, from page 57 to 72 is comprising all of your appendices, where we've got detailed information on different aspects of the budget, from capital expenditure to treasury information and many more. So if people are inclined to, it would be helpful when asking a question, if you do have the reference page in front of you. That helps us all to understand where the question's coming from. But thank you. Commissioner, did you want to come in on anything before we open the discussion?
I'm very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
And can I just check if the Acting Chief Exec wants to make any clarification, anything at all?
Not at this stage, thank you, Chair.
In that case, then, can I invite members to ask questions? Thank you. I've got Councillor Inglis and then Mr. Ford Newton.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on what you're saying about pay scales for officers, Mark. You're saying about the lower ones, obviously, on a lower salary, and the higher ones on a double salary. So just alarm bells are ringing. Would you be looking at A19 in the future then again to remove the top tier?
Absolutely not.
I see the Chief shaking his head.
No, I mean, what we've done, and it's a deliberate act within the budget, is to ensure that we know what those incremental costs are over the next few years. And we've made sure that the expenditure that we've got in the budget, there's some one-off expenditure in the budget that can be removed as those incrementals bite. So this is when I talk about the contributions to capital outlay that we've got in the budget. What that does is two things. Obviously that reduces as incremental progressions go up, but actually that investment reduces our longer term costs because it reduces our borrowing requirements, and therefore that means that the efficiencies that we required further down the line to afford that progression is eased. As I say, over a 5-year plan, and I actually go a couple of years further than that in our budgeting side. We need around about, say, £8.5 million over 5 years, all towards the bottom end of the back end of that plan. So we've got capacity to afford those increments as we go forward. It becomes tighter towards the back end of that. But our track record of delivering efficiencies, I think £2 million in the last 6 years is the minimum that we've delivered in any 1 year. I'm fairly confident that we, with the action plans, and again, some of the investments that we're putting in place today do deliver further efficiencies down the line. We have an active, what we call our annual departmental assessment process, which again is very much geared about investing now to deliver efficiencies in the future. So again, we are very confident that position is sustainable in the long term.
Lovely. Yeah, lovely answer. Thank you very much.
Mr. Popper-Newton, thank you.
Thank you. Page 127, investment strategy. There's an investment returns expectations. Long time ago, I was told never offer hostages to fortune. You say that bank rate is unlikely to rise from 0.1% for a considerable period. It went up to 0.5 last week. What impact will that have on investments and also on borrowing for capital?
Yeah, obviously we take Treasury advice from a firm called Link in there, and this was their thoughts. This wasn't written last week. This was probably written about 6-7 weeks ago, and I think that was we were starting to get indications at that stage of some increases. I think obviously the level of inflation and the heat in the economy is growing and has probably been higher than we've anticipated. The impact for the force actually is probably more likely to be positive than negative, in the sense that we've still got cash holdings that are invested. So obviously, as short-term interest rates go up, that tends to affect the short-term market rather than the longer-term market. Our longer-term market interest, if we're looking at debt, sort of certainly 10 to 75 year, which is longer term. That is we're looking at 2 to 2.5% at the moment for that. That the Bank of England short term impact there will not affect those longer term issues. What it does mean, sorry, this is quite a long answer. What it does mean is in our treasury management decisions, we will look whether we will borrow long term, because again these reports show that we're actually under borrowed. That means we're using our internal resources, our reserves and everything to support our capital programme. As interest rates rise, the benefit of doing that changes. Now, it is still very beneficial because long-term interest rates are around 2.5%. Short-term interest rates are still very, very short. So I don't think it will affect anything in a long-term or structural way. What it's likely to do is mean that short-term investment will be slightly higher than we would have anticipated, which should be a positive in the short-term budgets.
Thank you. That's very reassuring.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, on page 15, at the top of the page, pay and allowances. What I find a little bit disappointing with this, Commissioner, is that there's no comparison from 2021 to 2022 for us to compare the differences. That's a little bit disappointing. I thought we'd have something to compare to and from. Yeah, looking down, your staff costs, 1.3. This has gone up by 30%, I believe. If I look back in previous record, that's an increase of 30%. Probably you could explain that to me. And then further down, we're looking at other operating expenses, other supplies and services, 0.6. That's gone up 100% to last year. Could you explain that, please? Thank you, Chair.
Just for clarity, you're talking about Appendix B, aren't you, on the budget?
Sorry,
paper. So it's
yeah,
page 67 of
yes.
of the pack.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. I mean, you've got some answers around the Commissioner's staffing budget, which is the increase, the 0.3 of an increase that you talked to right at the beginning. So you will be getting some more information on the details behind that further down the line. What I will say, and you're right, we don't provide the comparators. It is available on the website because all last year's reports are all available, so you could do that. What you've seen over the last 2 years in the commissioning side is a significant increase in grants that are going through the Commissioner's office. So if you go back 3 or 4 years, the Commissioner would particularly have grants for a grants commissioning budget of about £5 million. You can see on this table now that's gone significantly higher. We're anticipating that closer to the £11 million. So that doubling is effectively meant that there's some extra costs in actually ensuring the commissioning takes place. That's what's driven the increase there. So again, the fact that we achieve more, get more money coming into Nottinghamshire from those grants means that we need to spend a little bit more, and it's relatively modest by comparison to the doubling from sort of like 5 million to, well, more than doubling from 5 million to 11 plus million of the actual grants commissioning that's required. And again, that is reflected to some extent in the supplies and services budgets, where we're obviously commissioning from and using other support services to help with that commissioning.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Greaves?
If I could, Chair. Well, having made a senior member of staff redundant at an alleged cost of 250,000, is this, would you say, value for money for us, would you say?
Can I just check? I'm always a bit nervous when we're talking about an individual, that it could be a confidential matter. Is this...
I didn't mention the individual.
No, I know, I realise that, but is it something that's in the plan? I didn't think I'd seen that personally. Perhaps you can help?
I can check the provenance of the information, please, Councillor Greaves.
Sorry?
Can I check the provenance of that information, please, Councillor Greaves?
I will give it to you later. I don't want to talk.
I think it is a matter of great sensitivity, and we couldn't answer that in this forum.
Thank you. Yes, I thought I hadn't seen it in, I don't remember every word of the 147 pages, but I knew I hadn't seen that. But it sounds like a conversation outside, I think, Councillor, that I think if there's a broader question of how resources are being used, then please come back.
Okay, it was alleged. It wasn't said, it was alleged. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Microphone. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Carlton. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. I have a question relating, and no surprises particularly, Newark Police Station. Following on from our last panel meeting, the Commissioner referred to negotiations that were currently underway, and for the Eagle-Eyed, we had a bit of an update in the Newark Advertiser last week. I was just wondering if we could provide a few more details on those negotiations and the impact on this budget this year and moving forwards.
Are you looking for the Commissioner to come in there? I think, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you, Councillor Carlton. We are still in negotiations. It is known that our negotiations are with East Midlands Ambulance Service. I think that's now in the public domain, and I'm very grateful to the Chief Constable for leading those negotiations for me. If the Chief Constable would like to say any more.
I think that Oracle, the Newark Advertiser, has sort of put things into the public domain. In really simple terms, the negotiations have progressed quite well, and in due course, I would be reporting to the Commissioner with their sort of concluding aspects, and I'm sure she will then report back to the panel. But it is, as she said, with EMAS, I think that's really positive. 2 blue light services, win-win in the public purse, and I think it also contributes to the wider strategic picture in Newark with regards to developing that area around the police station. So hopefully got to a win-win outcome.
Did you want?
Yes, I will actually, and it's more of a comment, I suppose, for anyone that does know Newark. In my sense, following our last panel meeting, whilst you couldn't confirm officially, I think probably in my mind's eye, I think I had a private guess at the other side who they may have been. So from my point of view, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. And if it helps in the longer run, not just within a police context, but also across CMAS, then it has my support.
Councillor Khan, then Councillor Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's just on page 56. It talks about after 7 years, in 2022-23, the force will fully move away from shared services provision. So that's finance, payroll, HR, and LND. So that's Operation Regain. I take that as. So I was just wanted to know how this would impact. I know there's a paper later on. It talks about the Home Office review. That's talking about working together and that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how this would impact on that. That was the first question. The second one was, with the precept of 9, just under £10, it talked about increasing numbers of police and other staff. But on page 66, it talks about there are 28 police officers and 7 staff full-time equivalents seconded out of the organisation in 22-23, but also when it compares it to the previous year, it was 26 officers and 8 full-time equivalents. So I'm just trying to understand the picture of, we're saying we're putting the precept up because we'll get more police officers, but at the same time we're seconding staff out. I know they might work in different areas, but I was just trying to understand that.
So I'll start with the MFS thing. I might ask yourself to look at the seconded position, because that's broadly neutral in terms of financial impact. Sorry, yeah. Yes, Op Regain we do to go live from the 1st of April, so only a matter of weeks away now on both our. From a finance perspective, the payroll system and financial management system, but it's an integrated HR system, and there's improvements to the duty management system. This has been a problematic service for the force for quite a few years, quite a significant decision to move away, and it's been several years in planning. It's got a very positive business case that pays for itself in a relatively quick succession. I think the main gain for ourselves is actually improvement in service, which will help drive the information available to us, both from a financial sense and an HR sense. So it gives us that potential in future to make better business decisions to drive at those efficiencies. If you look at the staffing numbers increases, we've talked about the increase in policing numbers. So we talk about on that little table that the Commissioner referred to earlier, it talks about the 25 extra staff. Underneath that, there are additional staff. I think it's about 18 additional staff that are coming in to both finance, HR, I think a little in IT as well, to support that coming back out. So that, again, jobs are moving from Cheshire into Nottinghamshire to do that. Most of those have already been recruited in this current financial year to assist with that implementation. Over and above that, we do have a significant implementation team. These are very big systems with quite a lot of data transfer, and so we've got temporary resources dropping out effectively from now to probably till September of next year. So we've recruited hopefully the right skills, right mix. We've got a little bit more control across HR and finance to deliver that, and it is a significant driver in those efficiency savings that I talked about earlier.
And the secondees are just business as usual. So it's because of the collaborations, it's which force leads on things. So regional organised crime, collaboration on things like ESN and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Khan? No, thank you. Councillor Ellis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Page 85 of the pack points out that Nottinghamshire have been more highly funded with the police grants than the council taxes, has been hit more harshly under austerity. And I noticed that the PCC's response on to question 2 suggests that the council tax is a progressive tax, and I think that's just wrong. The council tax, we know, is a regressive tax, and it's just the burden is being shifted from the national taxpayer onto local council taxpayer. It's a distinct government policy. Can I follow up Mr. Kimberley's comment earlier on? If I understood you to say that the incremental progression has to be absorbed, is that the incremental progression from Operation Uplift?
No, that's related. I think we're relating to the increase in incremental progression for police officers' pay.
I think the answer to the question is yes. So as they go up the scale points, taking on new officers and new staff, it has to be absorbed. Yeah.
So basically, we were assured that Operation Uplift was fully funding the officers, and I think we're saying it isn't fully funding the officers. It fully funds them year one, but not in future years.
What we've been careful to do is make sure we utilise the Operation Uplift money quite wisely. So what actually comes in is average funding for police officers. Now, what that means is obviously we've got a big increase in police officer numbers. So actually we've been funded as an average police officer in the short during Uplift, and that goes into our core budget for the long term position. In the short term, we've been recruiting officers. Obviously, some of those officers, I mean, transferees come in at the top, tend to come in at the top end of the scale. Most of those officers have been coming in towards the bottom end of the scales, and we're already, because we've been doing this a little bit earlier than most forces, we're now 2 years ahead of the schedule because government have pushed out the implementation a further year. So we're 2 years ahead. So we'll have those incremental progressions probably a little bit earlier than some, but we've been funded at the average. We're currently paying slightly below average for those new officers, and that's what helps us to deliver some of those investments in terms of particularly the capital contributions to the revenue contributions to capital expenditure, and those are designed to drop out. And again, this is something that we developed last year, so we're continuing that policy of sort of making sure that we aren't putting expenditure into our core expenditure that will create as a longer term problem as those progressions hit in terms of the financial sense.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Ellis?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Browns. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just about an appropriate time, I think. Just listening to all the different conversations we've had so far, it is around the Precept and the fact that the financial world has changed dramatically since the start of the plan. We're all kind of in a kind of shockwave kind of place at the moment. Even national government have said, right, how can we deal with it? So I'm sort of throwing out a challenge really, and it's do we really have to have the Precept this year when everything is going through the roof? I'm not going to labour them all. Everybody knows what's going on out there, and so to put it as a question, it's related to obviously the £769 million. I'm referring on page 36 in broad terms, the bullet points. It says funding nationally for the police increases by 769 million, and then the increase in council tax freedoms. So again, it talks about 288 million. So broadly, what I'm saying is I agree with all the principles of what we're trying to achieve in the report, but I'm saying at this time, we look at not doing the Precept this year. It might only be a straw on the camel's back. I think there's a challenge to everybody. We've looked at our finances in Mansfield. Everybody's got to kind of look at the immediate situation and try and gauge the short-term maybe loss of what the plans, what we'd hope to achieve, versus how we can actually help people in the immediacy. So that's my long-winded question to say, what would be the effect if not doing the Precept this year, and given the actual current situation, because it's there for the next 3 years, isn't it? And it's also got the figures about the funding coming from national government.
Well, that's an interesting question. Who'd like to take that? Commissioner, perhaps to you first, because it's also about policy matters as well.
If I start off, but if I lean across to my colleague Mark Kimberley too, I'm acutely aware of the finance. Sorry, I've frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's frozen. We'll wait.
Am I back?
You're back with us now. So yeah, we didn't miss very much. I think you're back. You've just got a bad network quality connection in front of your face. So we'll just wait a moment. Hopefully our IT people can solve that. Just give us a moment. Right, you're back in the person now, which is much better.
Thank you. Look, I'm really acutely aware. You know, we've got people who are really struggling for money, and I had to think really hard about whether this was the right time to increase the precept. But if we don't increase it, we're never going to be able to catch up again. It's there's so much we need to do. When you speak to people, you know, everybody wants more police officers on the street. They want us to do this preventative work. And to make the money work, we're going to have to increase. I'm really grateful that the government is actually helping out those people who are in band A to D. They will be getting £150 money back on their council tax. And I'm also mindful that actually the increase this year is less than the increase last year. Last year it was £14.94. This year it's £9.99. And I'm also absolutely sure we're going to be squeezing as many efficiencies as possible. And I am also to do everything that we need to do to deliver for the people of Nottinghamshire. I'm even going to be dipping into my reserves a little bit, because there's so. But that's because I think we should be spending to save in the long term. The preventative work that we will do now will stop there being more victims in the future. I'm confident of that. And you know, some of the, you know, the ANPR investment, actually if we do that right, we might even make money on it, but we have to invest now to get those savings later. But I did think about really hard about whether I should be putting the precept up, and I spoke with my police and crime commissioner colleagues too, and we're all really aware. But I've not met one police and crime commissioner who isn't going to the full £10, and that includes. I spend most of my time with my police and crime commissioners in my region, and one of the ones I work closely with is Mark Jones in Lincolnshire, and he's actually set it at £10 for the next 3 years to try and give some assurance for budgeting for his people, for his local people. It's a difficult one, and you have to make difficult decisions as a police and crime commissioner. But for me to be able to achieve what the people of Nottinghamshire want me to achieve, and listening to the police about what they need to achieve it, I'm going to have to ask if you'll consider the 999 rise. And just one more thing, I've been really well, not just me, the whole team have done really well at getting millions and millions of pounds extra out of the government. But we did that because they knew the precept had been maxed. We couldn't go any more on precept. If I don't put the precept up, and then I go, because I'm always chewing the ear off of the Home Secretary and the police and minister and others in Parliament, as you can imagine, but I haven't actually raised the money myself here. You know, that the precept increase will get an extra £3.3 million for us in Nottinghamshire. In the extras that I've mentioned today, there's an extra £5.4 million worth of extras of additionality that we're delivering. But if I don't ask for the increase, I can then not go with my hand on my heart to my ministerial colleagues and say I need more for more. The funding formula isn't strong enough for Nottinghamshire. We need your help. So unless I raise what I can raise here, I've got a very weak argument when I'm going to ask for more. And trust me, I've got a real vision to get millions and millions of pounds more out of government. But to do that, I'm going to have to get local people to help out too. Mark, would you like to add anything?
Can I just intervene just for a second, Mark? And apologies, Commissioner, but I think I've got three members put their hands up. I'm sure it's to do with the same issue, and I just want to capture that perhaps before Mark comes in.
Of course.
I've got Councillor McRae, Councillor Antrona, and Councillor Camilleri first. So, Councillor McRae.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be asking in a minute if we support this, and it works out at, what is it, I'm looking at the paperwork, 55 pence a month for those in the lowest banded areas, which is quite a lot. And for 55p a month, we're getting Operation Reacher, we're going to tackle knife crime, we're going to tackle gangs, we're going to ANPR. It's all these things that stops knife crime and gangs and all that lot. And if paying an extra 55p a month means that we don't have to wear T-shirts like I've got with names on the people that's been murdered, then yeah, 55p, it's worth it, isn't it? So I'm going to support it when I'm asked.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Councillor Antrona, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. One of the reasons that I asked the question at the previous meeting about district policing numbers was hopefully to give us a better perspective of the budget. And if I may just offer a perspective, and it's a perspective, not a criticism. One, I wholeheartedly will support the £10 increase. The people that I speak to in my community want to see better policing, and everybody wants to see better policing and want to support the police. However, if we look at the numbers, there's just under 2,500 full-time officers. Now, I don't know the spread of those officers, and I can only make some assumptions. I only know in my own area, I'm told by Inspector Bellamy, that we have 8 full-time officers in Basset Law. That's the number I got from a face-to-face discussion, and that's the number out in the Basset Law network, if you like. If we were to look at that and say, well, Basset Law contribute 11.1% of the Precept and 3.7% of the total resources of Nottinghamshire Police, 8 officers represent 0.3% of the total full-time officers employed within Nottinghamshire Police. And whilst we do understand that there'll be a significant body of that 2,500 or 2,492 officers that are on centralised roles or project roles, etc., even if it's half of them, that would equate to 46 officers for Basset Law, not 8. And all I'm trying to do is give a perspective, because that's the sort of perspective that we've got in the regions, and people need to see that they're getting value for money. I do welcome the comment that there's an extra 2 Operation Reacher per officers per area, but there's 9 areas, there's 24 officers. But I will support it. I do want to support you guys. You do a great job, but please understand the perspective of our residents and communities when we see that we're paying what on the face of it looks like 10 times the going rate for police officers compared to perhaps city or elsewhere. Thank you.
You, Councillor Antrona. Sorry, Commissioner, did you want to come in?
Yeah, would it be okay for the Chief just to pick on that, pick up on that one, because it's quite operational? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak to you after about the spread. I mean, I don't routinely give the precise detail of all the deployments, and I won't be doing. However, I do need to reassure you that that number is just bonkers. And you've got loads more than that. I go there regularly. There's loads of cops that cover your area. Policing is a layered service as well. And what that means is that if you have a murder in your patch, you get all the bells, whistles, toys, everything else that we can throw at it from across the force to detect that murder quickly and to reassure all your residents. And I have to deploy the resources based on threat and risk. And I'll always do that independently, which is the role that I undertake on your behalf. So the number of 9 is just bananas, but I'll speak to you after and explain why it is. Okay?
Thank you. I think those are technical terms, Councillor Antrona. I'm sure you're reassured.
I can only go on what I had in a face-to-face discussion with the district commander for Bassett Law. The number I was given was 8, not 9, as permanent officers in Bassett Law. I understand there are operational factors. I'm not that naive. I've been in enough businesses to understand that.
I suspect he was on around dedicated PC beat managers, but
Okay.
I'll have a chat with you after.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Camilleri, I hadn't forgotten you.
Yes, I support the £10 increase. I think it's a bit naive to think that you can have a zero rate and you would have to take the inflation increase. And so no, but you just can't do it in this day and age. £10 not going to cover your inflation rate increase. And like my colleague says here, it's 55 pence per month. And I know that the north of the county do need more officers, especially in Mansfield area and Ashfield, which is a tough area. We need more officers, and this is something we ought to be arguing about, not 53 pence, about what we get in the north of the area, not about the money, because that's where it is. It's we don't get our fair share of, I know you're going to say different, because we tend to be southern centricated. We're in Nottingham, we're in West Bridgeford, everything emanates from this golden building and where we are, and yet a lot of the crime is in the north of the county where we should have some face. I mean, even your headquarters is in the south of the county, which doesn't bode good. But I think I'm going to support the £10, and it's ridiculous to even think of a nil increase. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Ellis and then Councillor Inglis. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Can I come back on?
I was intending to come back.
Oh, yeah, sorry on that, yes.
Councillor Inglis, thank you. Oh no, yes, Councillor Ellis and then Councillor Inglis. Thank you. I'd already said that, hadn't I?
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate what the Commissioner is saying about being forced by the government to increase the precept in the same way as local authorities are being forced. The government says this is what you need to spend, but if you're going to spend that, you need to raise it from the council tax, which, as I said earlier on, is a regressive tax. I also recognise the weak argument. If you haven't raised as much as you can do, then you're difficult going back to ask for more money. So it's a rock in a hard place there, as it is with all council tax and precepting authorities. One point I would like to challenge, though, and I think we have to stop this rumour before it starts. The £150 off the council tax is part of reducing the fuel cost pressures. We can't claim that £150 for every time anybody increases council tax. They say, well, the government's taking £150 off. It was a one-off thing announced last week, purely for fuel, not for policing or local authority services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Inglis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. In regards to the precepts, we need to be asking ourselves, what do we want from this police force? Personally, I want the best police force in the country, and I'm sure everybody else there wants that best police force as well. It's something that's been strived for many years now, and it's coming to fruition. If somebody phones 39s, they want the police officer there expediently. So we need the officers, we need the fleet, we need the tools for people to do it, to deliver to the public. The Commissioner's outlined a really good plan for the future, for this year. So I think I'm full support of the £10, well, the £9.99 increase. But I think the question would be for the review is this time next year, so that plan has been delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Inglis. Any other councillors? Thank you, Councillor Cotton. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I do actually have a little bit of sympathy to the argument that Mayor Abrahams is making, given the context of where we are between inflation, national insurance increases, which in my mind is the wrong thing to do. However, I would just like to ask a question, not just necessarily in this financial year, but if this panel took the decision to vote down the proposed precept increase, what would be the knock-on financial impact over the coming years?
Thank you. Any other questions before we go back to Mayor Abrahams, who started this discussion? Mayor Abrahams.
Yeah, obviously quite a lot's been said. We all live in this world where, as leaders, we have this financial dilemma. Going back to government, whoever it might be, if you haven't taken advantage of raising the maximum in your area. I'm very pleased with the plan. I want to say that, and obviously I'm pleased with the way things have progressed over the last few years with increased resources, particularly for Mansfield. Just to drill down on the specifics of what I said, though, it was in relation to at the time when the plan was prepared, looking at it in terms of the exact financial situation at this point in time. The government, us as a district council, people preparing their budgets, are all trying to take into account the current situation with that's a massive spike. So we can always relate back to how many pence it might be, etc. But my specific question was, if it wasn't included in this year's budget, you know, what effect would it have in the long run? And considering that our game changes from year to year with budgeting, you know, if we talked about what we were expecting this year in relation to our aspirations compared to where we were last year, we'd have a completely different menu in front of us. So it is a special situation because we're in front of something that we haven't faced in, we're talking 20, 30 years with potential inflationary pressures. So that's why I've raised it, not because I don't agree with the plan and the aspiration, but I think we all have to kind of view what is immediately in front of us. And I'd say every little helps, and we have to cut our cloth. And if it ended up a small tweaking of what would be happening, it's easy to say, the fact that we're deferring it 1 year compared to that big plan, I'm asking for consideration.
Thank you, Mayor Abrahams. I think before handing it, oh, I can see a hand up. Sorry, Commissioner, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Abrahams. I just draw your attention back to that table on page, I think it's page 59. That's all the stuff you wouldn't be getting if we don't do the extra £9.99.
Thank you. The point I was going to raise was it's not for us here today, but I think it's a thought-provoking question that you've asked, which for me is much more about how we're going to reconfigure following COVID. Lots of things have changed. People's attitude to how they want to go to work, where they work, how they undertake things. So I think there are going to be challenges for organisations, both in terms of re-looking at the kind of their manpower for the future and their space utilisation. I mean, I know you talk about it in here, but we're kind of not quite through all of it yet. But it's a complete re-engineering is the way I see it for the future. And if people aren't working on those plans, then they jolly well should be, because that's the future. You want to come back, Mary?
Yeah, because we had that discussion, didn't we? The fact that, again, we're talking about when the plans for the new building and how it was going to work, everything, it was the pre-COVID world. And we know that the way we operate has completely changed. The whole working world has changed. And so I think that's a specific area where I'm not going to say additional savings can be made, but we've got so many plates moving at this point in time. And that's another aspect. I think we should be really looking at what our aspiration was for that building and what's the economics maybe in a different situation as that building operates. And that all gets fed back into this bigger picture of what we're talking about.
Thank you. Commissioner, did you want to come back at this stage? I know you've asked Mark to come in on some of the detailed issues, but did you want to come back at all?
Yeah, it's that table on 59. That is what you're going to be getting with the precept increase. That's the additionality. That's the more for more. So without that £9.99, we cannot do the things on that grid, and that means we'll be forever playing catch up too. Because I think Mark will correct me on the figure. I think it's about £3.2 million that £9.99 raises. But if we don't get it this year, we can't catch it up. If I could bring Mark in.
Just coming back to Mayor Abraham's sort of initial comments around the government funding and so forth. we have 27th January, the final figures were released. Nottinghamshire's numbers were confirmed as per here. We've had Nottinghamshire has had a 5.5% increase in funding. Now that would appear to be above inflation, but that includes the uplift amounts as well, which are mandated and supported separately. If we strip that out, the net increase in funding delivered with the £10 increase is just over 2%. So much below inflation, and that's why we require the efficiencies to keep forward. I think Councillor Ellis and the Commissioner have sort of indicated already with some of their comments there is this shift towards local taxation to pay for services. If you'd have looked at a report, only a few years back, it would have said that burden is not a third and 2/3; it's 40%, 60%. So clearly we're seeing a marked shift in the funding being localised. That is a government policy. We work within that. Just to make everybody clear, my strong advice to the Commissioner professionally would be to have gone up by the maximum amount available to her. And the reason for that is without that increase, you will have a real terms reduction in service. Again, Councillor Carlton asked the question about the impact of that on a longer term basis. I haven't got the figures exactly, but I've just sort of done a rough calculation myself. So if we voted down a 0% increase over the next 5 years, we would be around £22 million worse off in force. I think it's better to put that in perspective of what that means at operational level. So that would mean not this year, but next year, we would have to remove at least 35 police officers from our establishment, and the year after a further 35 police officers from our establishment. So that's around 70 police officers. That's the impact, and obviously that would, without talking to the Chief Constable, I'm sure that would have significant impact on what we're trying to deliver as a service. That's just looking at it in police officers. The drive towards the £10, the advice that we're giving on the £10 actually, as you say, gives us a real term increase. I think the important thing in terms of the way government policy works in this way is if we don't go that £10, you could argue that we could do different things in this year. We have no way of making that back up. So if we went £8 this year, we can't go £12 the year after, because to me personally, I think that's a failing in the way that the mechanism works, because it discourages to look at those short term impacts, because the longer term impact at £21.2 million for 55p a month is just so disproportionate. And that's why the advice would be to go by the maximum.
Thank you very much. Chief Executive.
Yes, if I might just come in just to address the point of confidence, which I think is kind of underlying some of the questions that we've heard today from councillors. I think it's a really good point in terms of where will we be this time next year. We've got cost of living squeeze and so on. So I just wanted to give panel members assurances that there are plans in train around that in terms of this investment and holding the force to account, which is absolutely the role of Commissioner and our office.
Thank you for that. I'll just check if the Commissioner has any further points she wishes to make. You're fine, thank you. In that case, can I check, are there any other questions on the budget and precept papers? Councillor Carlton.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a quick comment to come back to Mark in respect of the answer he just gave me. So thank you for that. I think it gives you a real indication of decisions made this year that not just affect this year. So on that basis, I will be supporting the proposal. I think we all, regardless of which political side or none that we come to in this chamber, I think we all want to live in a safer Nottinghamshire. I know I speak for myself and my partner. We want to start a family this year. I would like my child or future child to grow up in a safe county. And given, as in one example, some of the scenes that we saw this weekend in relation to the football matches in Nottingham, absolutely disgusting. And people then, I suppose, on a very simple basis, wonder why we are taking these decisions to increase funding when it's to deal with situations like that. So it has my full support.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I agree with Mark. The government is shifting from funding from the government to local investment in this police force. But the fear is by doing that, then the locals, as in my area, Worksop, demand more for the money. And, you know, why you shifted it from the government, can understand Mark's argument in that, but by making it more local, so people want to do more, want more for the money. They want more police on the streets. And that's my emphasis on this. I mean, I'm going to come to the Commissioner now. I mean, when she did her manifesto, I said this last time in the meeting, you may remember, about Worksop being promised a new police station, which the Commissioner said, no, she didn't do it. She didn't make that statement. And Commissioner, I agree, and I apologise for that. But you did say we've got a second best police station in Worksop. And my argument to you is, how are you going to shift that to making it a better police station in Worksop? You said you were going to review and have a public consultation and a review of all police stations throughout the county. When is that going to take place, Commissioner? Because you said Worksop deserves a proper police station and better resources. So when are those going to be implemented? Also, in agreement with yourself, obviously, was the MP with that, saying that we need a better police station, or in his words, a proper police station in Worksop. So what I'm saying, going back to Mark, the £10 precept, yes, it's been taken away now from government, coming more local, but people then demand more. And, you know, when are you going to improve the police station in Worksop? I'm just being parochial, Commissioner, but I want to know when you're doing it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you want to come back just on that particular point?
Thank you so much, Councillor Greaves, for apologising for putting words into my mouth that I didn't say. I really appreciate that. I did say that I would do a review of estates, and I did say I would do a public consultation on any police stations that were closing. And I said that very much with Newark in mind, as you know. And I have done that with Newark. I did a public consultation and we've changed the decision on what's happening with Newark. With regard to review of estates, we've already started to do an estate strategy, and that is ongoing. I can assure you there's been a lot more resources going into Worksop during my tenure, and an example of that is the £550,000 worth of Safer Streets funding, which I secured.
But wasn't that government funding, Commissioner?
Government funding which our office put a bid in for, which wouldn't have happened without me here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can I just check, are there any final questions? Thank you, Councillor Introna.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on that last point, I don't agree with Councillor Greaves on a lot of things on a day-to-day basis, but I certainly do on this. With the greatest of respect, I've got the video in front of me, and it says Worksop deserves a proper police station. If elected, I will review all police station closures in Notts in the first 90 days. And within the video, Commissioner, you said that there would be a full public consultation with regard to Worksop Police Station. And there's been intimation that that would be a broad brush discussion about police station or stations in Nottinghamshire. And all we're asking for is a public consultation, which we were promised. We understand that there are funding restrictions and there are operational needs and decisions to be made. And all we ask for is that public consultation that we were promised. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I don't have the video in front of me, Councillor Trona. I will go back to my line that I was very clear that I was talking about Newark, which was at that time about to be moved, and I am still true to my word that we will be doing an estates review of all estates and not of police estates in Nottinghamshire.
Thank you, and probably that discussion can take place when you're fully recovered and you have an opportunity to meet up with colleagues. Thank you for that. Can I just check, are there any further questions around the budget and precept papers? If not, then can I draw your attention then to page 31, the recommendations. The first recommendation under 2.1, members are requested to support the proposed increase in Band D council tax by £9.99. And we need to take this vote by a show of hands, and would you please just keep your hand up if give the chance of our colleagues here just to check who's voting for, who's voting against, and anyone who may want to abstain. So can I propose first of all from the chair that people put forward their hands if they are supporting the proposed increase to Band D of £9.99. Did you get everyone? Thank you. Anyone opposing? Anyone wishing to abstain? We have 2 members there. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And the second recommendation was that we provide feedback in respect of the budget and financial strategies. And I think we've done that, Commissioner. So thank you for that. We can move then on the agenda back to item 8, your plan. Thank you, Commissioner. There were some questions that people may wish to come back to. I think probably some of them we've covered in the financial papers, but I'll just check with colleagues if they still wish to ask you any specific questions on item 8, your plan. Can I just, I've got a couple of hands up. Thank you. Councillor Khan and Councillor Woodings to start with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I thank the Commissioner for her Make Not It Safe plan. It's really good reading. I did have a meeting with you yesterday, which unfortunately, obviously, you couldn't make. But I would now like to see how we can actually implement this. So you make comments within the plan about empowering communities, the neighbourhood kind of focus, looking at tackling speeding, ASB. Talk about establishing an antisocial behaviour task force. It's good to see you've got numbers within the plan. The only number that I didn't actually see was around antisocial behaviour. Doesn't seem to be a number unless I've missed it. But also about speeding. Speeding is a big issue, and I know. Thank you for joining me in the city to look at issues with ASB, with speeding. We've already got groups of volunteers within the community who want to do the speed watch, but the barriers to that is some to do with the kind of training, some to do with funding. I know in the city we had 2 cameras, but actually I've just found out within the last week one of them is too old and can't be used. So with regards to the kind of commitment in your plan, I'd like to see how we can actually now implement this to really make a difference in our neighbourhoods.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor? Sorry, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Khan, and it was a pleasure to come out with you. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to meet yesterday. I thought about putting numbers around ASB because it's one of the regular things that come up, and it's very much a joint response. So yes, we will be measuring it. It wasn't one of the key indicators. I just picked my top ones for the plan. And with regard to your amazing volunteers, I want to encourage as much community speed watch as possible, and there'll be more plans coming out about that.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Khan? No, thank you. Councillor Woodings, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry you can't join us live today, and I hope you feel better soon. I'm really pleased that you have prioritised violence against women and girls within your plan. And I, like my colleague, I welcome the return to hard targets for some of the crimes that we face as well. I notice also in your latest newsletter, you reference the £1.8 million windfall to support services for violence against women and girls within the county. I think the feedback I get from the sector, though, is that one-off funding is a really good thing. But a lot of the charities and commission services we deal with spend a lot of their time and resources having to rebid for one-off funding to keep them going a little bit further, just a little bit longer. And I notice, it's really welcome that we'll have more ISVAs and IDVAs, but that funding will sustain us through until March 2023. I think the issue of violence against women and girls, I think you'd agree with me, it's a medium to long-term project to actually turn that around. And I do hope that you are making representations to say that we need sustained regular funding within our base budgets in order to tackle this tsunami of crimes that are committed against women, 3 million crimes in the last 3 years. The other thing I want to comment on is that, I'm really proud that in 2016, Nottinghamshire police declared misogyny a hate crime in relation to violence against women and girls. It was really disappointing that Boris Johnson has refused to support making it an actual hate crime. I think he said something like, if you widen the scope of what the police have to do, you'll just increase the problem. I really don't understand that comment. And then we have Dominic Raab, the Secretary of State for Justice, not even understanding that misogyny, the very word misogyny, refers to crimes solely directed at women and not men as well. We have fewer than 1 in 60 rape cases prosecuted at the moment, a record low of prosecutions, down 70% from 2017. Do you think the government's got it wrong on declaring misogyny a hate crime? Do you agree with me that it's time that men stopped denying and undermining the lived experiences of women? And will you join the call to make misogyny a hate crime in the same way that racism and homophobia are already hate crimes?
Thank you. I've got a couple of others waiting, but do you want to come back on that particular one, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you very much. Really important points, and I'm pleased that you've noticed that violence against women and girls is a real golden thread going through the whole of the plan. I can absolutely assure you that I'm very robust with my arguments to the ministers about the short-termness of this funding. It's not good enough. I mean, we need to make sure that our fantastic third sectors organisations, which we have brilliant ones in Nottinghamshire, can spend their time on delivering rather than spending their time on writing bibs, to be frank. I'm very lucky with Sharon Cadell, who's got real expertise in this area and has joined me in meetings with the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, the Victims Commissioner, and MOJ colleagues. With regards to misogyny, I've been listening very much to our Chief Constable here, and the Chief Constable is happy with how the law is. So I'm tending to agree to that. That doesn't mean I don't think it's important, but what we have is working for us in Nottinghamshire.
Okay, Councillor.
Well, I find it quite strange because obviously the information coming out from government is that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, is absolutely furious that there's no backing to make misogyny a hate crime in the same way that racism is deemed a hate crime and homophobia is deemed a hate crime as well. And so I don't think you would be speaking out of turn if you joined her in calling for the formalisation of this fantastic policy that we have in Notts Police. All it calls for is an uplift to sentencing. So we would have common assault, you have racially aggravated common assault, you add something to the offence because it was, directed against somebody because of their race. It is a simple change in the law. And I'm really surprised and disappointed, actually, that you're not joining the call to make misogyny a hate crime.
I think this sounds like perhaps it's a pity the Commissioner is unwell, because it would be helpful. Would have been helpful if you were here. Then you could have continued this conversation, I think, a little later. But I'm sure Commissioner has listened to your particular side of the comment. Commissioner, did you want to come back? I've got a couple of other questions to take yet for you.
Actually, I'd be grateful if the Chief Constable could just mention feedback about misogyny and how it's working in Nottinghamshire.
Just briefly, I have not changed the policy in any way, shape or form. I've given some feedback to other Chief Constables of the forces, and we've done our bit on the national side of things. Clearly, government policy is a matter for government, and I'm not going to pass any further comment on that aspect. But what I would say is we've got a good local arrangement, and I fully support the arrangements that we've got and have no operational intentions of changing them, Linda.
Okay, I think this probably is a debate to be taken outside, I think. If you don't mind. Can I move on? I've got Councillor Greaves, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just hanging on what Councillor Woodings was saying. Also, I think the rising not only hate for women should be, obviously is a crime, but stalking of women also. And that seems to be put on the back burner somehow, and by a lot of forces, not saying this one, I'm saying by a lot of forces, it seems to be not taken seriously, where, women are absolutely petrified of stalking, and we're incidents where women have been pleading with the police to come out and put a stop to it, and they've been ignored, their voices have been ignored. What have we got in place for stalking? It'd be interesting to hear, Commissioner.
Would you like the Chief to answer that, Commissioner?
Yeah, and Chief, if you could mention the letter we had from the doctor about stalking that only came through yesterday as evidence of the offer we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point that you make. We've consistently put more resources into stalking. We got one of the first stalking prevention orders, and we have increased the resources further as a result of successive uplifts and Precept uplifts, actually. It's a really comprehensive picture. The Public Protection Department specialise in that particular investigation. They are based at Oxclose Lane and at Mansfield, and they cover the whole of the force area. So it's a specialist response. And just this weekend, two examples. I was duty this weekend. We were chasing around somebody across the whole of the West Midlands for an offence committed against a victim in Nottinghamshire. It does get a huge priority from us. And also the letter that the Commissioner was referring to was from a doctor who had written to myself and the Commissioner this week, who was the victim of stalking, a really horrendous case. She at one time lived on our patch, but the stalking occurred on our patch and on several other places. And what she was congratulating the force and ourselves for was we employed a stalking prevention officer, so a police staff member paid for exclusively by the force, and that individual helped signpost victims and also support victims through the prosecution process and all the civil processes. It's a really hard role, but I had a 3-page letter which was really gushing about this individual's performance. So that was what the Commissioner was referring to. So yes, I agree with you. It's definitely a local priority.
Thank you. I've got Councillor McRae and Mrs Harding.
I've got 3 questions. Shall I do like one and then someone else and then come back to me in a bit? Right. Off-road bikes blight neighbourhoods in many areas across the county, and areas which suffer usually have multiple access points and are crisscrossed by footpaths and bridleways, so access can't be designed out, especially as disability access has to be maintained. Neighbourhood policing teams are unable to stop perpetrators as they have no off-road provision. There is no way of identifying perpetrators without stopping them. Local authorities are also unable to identify and stop perpetrators, which leave very little which can be done locally, if anything, without the off-road team, which is always in high demand, so very often unavailable. It does look good fun as well, actually. Are there any plans to increase the capacity of the off-road team?
I'm seeing the Chief Constable shake his head like that, so I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for.
Operationally, no, there's no plans, but there are plans to refresh some of those bikes to increase their ability to go on and off-road. But we have got a dedicated team. They're precepted off all the neighbourhoods and they're tasked accordingly to wherever the need is. They're always busy. A sergeant coordinates them, and I'm quite happy with the provision.
Thank you. I know you've other questions, Councillor McRae, but you asked me to go to Mrs. Harding next.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'd like to ask a question about the Criminal Justice and Assurance Board. I believe that met on the 13th of December of last year. We would be grateful if you could enlighten the panel on what progress has been made within the panel and if they have a business plan or any actions that they're going to proceed with.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Harding. The first meeting was really just setting terms of reference, and at the first meeting, CPS weren't there. So since then, I've been working really hard with CPS, and CPS are coming to our next meeting, and not just that, they're on the agenda. So I'm very happy with that result.
Perhaps in the future, would it be possible to give us an update on how that's progressing? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm very clear that what I'm looking to achieve is a better working relationship across our partners in Nottinghamshire, and very much looking at pinch points and where we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McRae.
Right, thank you. Right, your report states that levels of violent knife crime have fallen by a further 9%, 71 offences over the last year, continuing the downward trend since March 2018. It is positive to hear that the number of violent knife crimes continues to fall, but can you please tell us about the current trends with regard to non-violent knife crime and possession offences? Following a number of high-profile offences, please can you set out whether there are any trends in violent knife crime offences? For example, does the level of harm caused by violent knife crime correlate with previous years of... Sorry, I've had too much coffee, my head's hurting a bit. Or previous years or offences becoming fewer, but the harm from them greater? Please can you explain how these trends are affecting your strategy and investment?
I think it's coffee you need, Councillor.
I've had too much of it. I shouldn't drink it.
Commissioner.
Some of that I'd be really keen to pick up at the next meeting when we have Natalie presenting from the Violence Reduction Unit. I think that would be really helpful. But operationally, if the Chief would like to talk about how the offences have been changing.
So I think Natalie will give the full picture of history, etc. But on a day-to-day basis, we continue with the expansion that we've had to uncover possession offences and to respond to those offences quite positively. Knife crime teams in particular, one in the city, one in the county, that are tasked all over the place. And in addition to that, the reach teams. So the reality is, from my perspective, is it's a priority on a local basis, on a force-wide basis. Some of those offences have changed over time. I mean, if you look at, for example, some of the national homicide data, we are definitely low on the homicide side of things per thousand population. and years ago we were much higher, weren't we? So I think that some of those things change over time. The prevalence of knives involved in homicides and assaults will always be a concern to us all. But with regards to the enforcement side of things, that's pretty much an improving picture as the numbers increase, particularly the number of newer police officers in uniform in their probation. And then linked to that, as the Commissioner just alluded to, really, it's that other stuff around prevention where we need to try, and everybody, the system needs to try and keep some of the cash in, particularly with younger kids that are coming through and the opinion formers of tomorrow.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor McRae, or are you satisfied with that?
I'm always happy with his answers, but I've got another question. Right. The government's 10-year National Drugs Plan, which was published on the 6th of December 2020, set out commitments to break drug supply chains while simultaneously reducing the demand for drugs by getting people suffering from addiction into treatment and deterring recreational drug use. Please can you set out how this links in with the new police and crime plan, highlighting where there are common areas and where in places increased demand? Do the areas of increased demand threaten the achievability of any of the other objectives set out in the plan?
Is that just something you want to pick up, or one of your team, Commissioner?
Is it okay if Sharon Riddell picks this one, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councillor McRae. So I think you will see the police and crime plan again throughout it has threaded intentions in terms of prevention, responding, and preventing, responding, and supporting against all kind of crime types. But substance misuse is priority within there. From Harm to Hope has just emerged recently, but we see that there are quite a lot of synergies between the plan and the intentions in the Harm to Hope strategy. And I think we're in early discussions with our community safety partners in terms of just corralling a local partnership that is much more focused in terms of drugs policy, drugs intervention, and ultimately prevention.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll keep it brief. It's just good to see, Commissioner, in your plan under the equality and diversity section that you mention about representation and looking at the police workforce and having a more diverse workforce. But I think what will happen, and as part of that, underneath you talk about you're committed to working with the youth justice partners to help address over-representation of black and mixed young people in the criminal justice system. So I'll be really keen to look at how that progresses. But I think if we're going to move young people away from crime, and we need real role models. So that is senior police officers within Nottinghamshire. But also I think it's important because you're doing your restructures within your office and stuff. Again, you've got to lead by examples. It's one thing saying something, but then there's an action that you do with that. So I'd really welcome these, but I would like to, in the future, look at how actually the numbers are changing and what we're actually, what actions are we putting in place to make that difference. It's, like I've said, it's sometimes you get people saying the right things, but it's the doing that really matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Did you want to come back, Commissioner, on anything?
Well, I completely agree with what Councillor Khan said there. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, then this is all related to item 8, the police and crime panel making not safer plan. Commissioner, thank you for the plan. I'm sure it looks lovely in colour. I've only got a grey version. I have to say congratulations to you on the plan. I think it's a very good read, and I'm sure that I assume it's going to go on your webpage or may already be on. I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at it. I've been reading all these pages. But I'm sure the public will welcome seeing the plan actually when they get an opportunity. So thank you for that. If people are... Sorry.
Thank you. It was absolutely a team effort, and thank you for your feedback, which you'll see did get into the plan too. Thank you.
Councillor McRae, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, where can we get hard copies of this? Because I'd like to make sure we get them in the library and like schools and that locally, like we did last time. And then I feel bad not thanking anybody yet. So can I just please pass on thanks to our new inspector that we've got in Broxtowe. He's only been in post, a month, if I say that, I think. He actually came down the youth club the other day and he engaged with the kids and that. He was playing pool. He went on one of the VR sets, which I made sure I videoed that, so I will show his boss when this meeting finishes. But no, I was really impressed. You know, he took the time to come and engage with the youngsters, which is kind of what your plan shows, doesn't it? Working with the kids. So pass on a thanks to him, and that, yeah, it's important, isn't it?
Comment.
Yeah, it's just in respect of hard copies of the plan, so they are available in our office. I know that we sent out an email to everybody that that we had on our circulation list, making the offer to send one, and a PDF copy should have already been sent out, but we can certainly send you one.
If people are content, then can we move to item 9, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner's update report? Obviously, this was written a few days ago, but clearly we've covered a number of things in the general discussion we've had around the budget. But are there any specific questions people want to raise that we haven't covered in the other items on the agenda that are included in this regular update? Councillor Ellis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Page 207, which is the appendix, shows the indicates there's been a reduction in the feelings of safety, in the area after dark. It's been declining since December 2020, and I just wondered if there's any more detail on that, if there are patterns about where and when. I mean, I'm assuming that this ties in to some extent with Councillor Wooding's discussion about crimes against women. And are there any actions planned? And I know there are some safer streets schemes to extend that across the county. Thank you.
Commissioner, do you want to pick this up, or one of your team?
Yeah, I'm happy to say a little. Also, it might be useful bringing Dan in, who's got these on a more granular numbers on a more granular detail. But I was also disappointed to see that feelings of safety in the area after dark. I think it's gone now to 6.3 reduction in feeling of safety, and we are exploring the reasons for this. But it does seem to reflect the national trend, and it's likely to be linked to the high-profile impact of the Sarah Everard case in March last year, and also changes in people's lifestyles. I mean, people haven't been going out so much and travelling and commuting and being outside at dark in the dark. But I don't know whether Dan wants to say anything more specific, or the Chief to come in.
Chief, do you want to come in on this?
I think Dan was first, Chair.
Yeah, I really don't have too much to add to that actually at this stage. I mean, it's something that we are looking into. We've got an absolute wealth of sort of survey data that enables us to sort of drill down into this issue. And interestingly, the figures that we've looked at so far do indicate that the reductions in feelings of safety have been across both the male and female population over the last year. And as the Commissioner mentions, this reduction has continued into December. The latest results that we've received from the Police and Crime Survey, which are now showing, that 6.3% reduction in feelings of safety. Other than to sort of speculate some of the areas that the issues that are likely to have contributed to that, but it is something that does appear to be reflected on a national basis. So there are some sort of macro factors at play here. But yeah, other than to say that we are looking into it in a lot more detail, and we'll be unpicking those figures and looking at sort of some of the related factors as part of the Police and Crime Survey.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you. Did you want to add anything? No, thank you. Are you content with the answer, Councillor Ellis?
I think I'd just say it would be interesting to see the something about the analysis and the Commissioner's plans to address this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. One small example is that women actually told us that one of the areas they felt most unsafe at night was actually public transport. So we know that's something we are doing a little trial on through the Safer Streets funding of having police on trams, etc. But we need to dig deeper into this.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you. Well, the report was there for us to scrutinise and note. Then can we move then to item 10 of the agenda, which is the report for information produced by Sharon Cadell, which was up to date at the time of writing. These things can move without you realising it. Thank you for the report, Sharon. Have you had any further information? It's very helpful to just receive these things and know just where we are on this travelling plan.
No, so it is in train. It's moving feast at the moment in terms of where it will land. We were expecting something to come out of Home Office, and when Home Secretary visited a couple of Fridays ago, we did press her on the point, and it was expected to be the conclusions of the review. We were told were expected to emerge imminently. So yes. I think we will be in a position, if not next panel, at the one after that, to be able to bring a paper here and describe how those changes are likely to impact on us. As I say, it is an information report. We have got some strong indications from the terms of reference, but no conclusions as yet.
Thank you very much. If there are no further, thank you, Councillor Carr.
Sorry, is this item 10? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just had two quick questions. So on page 227, under 3.12, it talks about Home Office is considering bringing forward legislation to mandate that each PCC must appoint a deputy. So here we've just moved away from that model. But also on page 229, under 3.22, it talks about they're consulting on whether to mandate the transfer of fire and rescue functions to the police. And my kind of thing is, if we're moving away from Operation Regain, of moving away from the fire service and having our own, is this just mean we go on this process? I understand the answer that was given to me earlier about saving money, but then are we just going to do a whole U-turn again later on?
I'll take the first point, if I may, on the Deputy PCC. So I think there's a point here in terms of resilience rather than, this is just suggested rather than being actual policy that's emerging or an actual requirement that's legislated for at the moment. The point that's been broadly made in terms of the Police and Crime Commissioner model is that there are some vulnerabilities in the single elected individual model, if, for instance, they are abstracted for any length of time. So what's come out of that is the need for succession planning. And you're kind of catching us as we're moving through a lot of development with this, because we have actually just developed a succession plan, which would provide that resilience if there was an abstraction. So that's that first point. And again, I think I can hear my colleagues behind me. In terms of Operation Regain, this is policy posited within this review. It has received very mixed reception from local government association that I'm aware of, so we're really not sure how that will land.
And so just in relation to Regain, so we aren't currently in a collaboration with the fire service, but actually I believe they use a system we're going to anyway. So I think your earlier comment around the Home Office around collaboration, whilst we are splitting away from what was a collaboration, we've also done a real scrutiny of the lessons learned, and what we aren't doing is closing the door to the future, but we felt for the efficiencies and the reasons that have been well outlined, we needed to come away from the original collaboration, both in terms of the service for our staff, but also the cost that we're accruing with the old system. But there is still opportunities in the future once we've established our system in-house that should we want to collaborate and be able to, we'd be able to do it, plus having people locally employed that we didn't have before.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. I've got Mr. Bob Vaughan-Newton.
Thank you, Chair. Page 230, point 3.25. speaks about police and crime panel model, specifically the benefits of independent members. I would say this, wouldn't I? Identifying and securing the right skill sets and options to strengthen panel support. Nottinghamshire is in the unusual position, as I understand it, of having 4 independent members. I think virtually every other PCP has only 2 independents. Any insight into what the Home Office thinking is along this, please?
I think I could only relay to you what's generally in the public domain, which is that, they've examined the whole sort of governance, the whole accountability and support and scrutiny function around it, and they feel that there are areas that they really need to strengthen. We have, and we have tried to probe, I would say, in terms of our engagement with the Home Office on this, but we haven't had any clues come out as yet.
I think for the purpose of this being transmitted, we should make it clear that in this reference, we're talking about unelected independent members and not elected independent members. There is a strong distinction there, and we wouldn't want to mislead people. If there are no further questions, before closing the committee, can I thank the Commissioner? I do hope you feel much better soon. We missed your presence here and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you everyone for your forbearance. I duly declare the meeting closed.